The first thing you notice about Blakemore Street in the evening is the quiet. It's a quiet that doesn't belong. This street is right in the middle of the south side, you know the type. Row houses with bars on the windows, liquor stores on every corner, and sirens so common you just learn to tune them out. During the day, Blakemore is exactly what you'd expect. Loud. People shouting, engines revving, music blasting from open windows. But as soon as the sun goes down, something changes. The street doesn't get peaceful. It feels like it's holding its breath, waiting. And right there, in the middle of it all, is the house. 2 stories with white paint that's yellowed over time. The front porch sags just enough to look tired, but not completely abandoned. Every other house on this block is either boarded up or burned out, a row of dead eyes. But this one still has lights on inside. Someone lives there. Or, at least, someone used to. I moved in because it was cheap. Let's be honest, that's the only reason anyone ever moves to a place like this. My plan was simple: stay for 6 months, save up some cash, and then get the hell out. I made a point not to ask any questions about the last person who lived here. In neighborhoods like this, people just disappear all the time. It's part of the background noise. The first night, I could feel the neighbors watching me. They weren't obvious about it, just standing on their porches, leaning against their cars, pretending to scroll through their phones. But their eyes followed me as I hauled boxes from my car to the front door. I remember seeing one old woman across the street. She just looked at me, saw me unlocking the door, and slowly shook her head. It was a silent warning, like she wanted to say something but didn't dare. Inside, the house smelled like dust and old wood. But it was a clean smell. No mold, no rot. It was just stale. It's the kind of smell that clings to places where nothing has changed in a very, very long time. I locked the heavy front door, went around checking all the windows, and finally tried to relax. At exactly 7:43 p.m., the knocking started. 3 slow, deliberate knocks on the front door. I figured it was a neighbor, maybe coming to warn me about parking or tell me to keep the noise down. I swung the door open, but the porch was empty. I even stepped outside and looked down the street. It was deserted. Not a single car moving, no footsteps, no voices. I just shrugged it off. Probably just some kids messing around. Then, at 8:10 p.m., the knocking came again. This time, it was louder. Like whoever was out there knew I was inside and wasn't going to be ignored. I didn't open the door this time. Instead, I crept over and looked through the peephole. The porch light was flickering, casting these long, dancing shadows across the cracked wood. There was no one standing there. But then, for just a split second, I saw the shadow of someone move. It was impossibly tall and way too close to the door. I stumbled backward, away from the peephole. At exactly 9 p.m., the power went out. The house was plunged into a darkness so complete it felt thick, almost physical, like something pressing against my eyes. I looked out the window. The street lights were still on. The neon sign of the liquor store at the end of the block was still glowing. It was only my house that was dark. And that's when I heard it, footsteps, upstairs. They were slow, heavy, measured, each step deliberate. I stood frozen at the bottom of the staircase, my heart pounding in my chest, just listening as the steps crossed the hallway directly above me. I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that no one else was supposed to be in that house. I had locked every single door, every single window. I heard a creak, like weight shifting on old floorboards. And then the knocking started again. But this time, it wasn't at the door. It was on the walls. It was moving through the house from the living room to the kitchen, up the stairs, and then along the ceiling. Always 3 knocks. Always slow and patient. I scrambled for my phone, my hands shaking as I tried to dial 911. No signal. Not a single bar. The screen flickered once, then went completely black, dead. That's when the voices started. At first, it just sounded like murmuring, like dozens of people whispering all at once. The sound was coming from everywhere, from inside the walls, from the air vents, from the floorboards right beneath my feet. I couldn't make out any words, just the raw emotion behind them. Anger, fear, desperation. Then one voice cut through the others, suddenly clear. Open the door. It was a man's voice. Calm down, patient. Terrifyingly patient. I bolted for the back door, fumbling with the lock. It was bolted shut. As my hand gripped the handle, it started to rattle. Something on the other side was trying it from the outside, slowly, deliberately turning the knob. You live here now, the voice said again. This time, it was closer. Right behind me. I spun around, my back pressed against the door. The living room was empty. But the walls were wrong. There were shapes pressing against the plaster from the inside, like bodies trapped just beneath the surface. I could see hands, faces, mouths opening and closing in silent screams. The knocking became frantic, coming from every direction at once. I finally screamed. I screamed for help until my throat was raw. And that's when the neighbors finally reacted. Lights blinked on in the houses across the street. Doors cracked open. I could see people watching from a distance, from the safety of their porches. But none of them came any closer. No one even stepped off their property onto the sidewalk. I saw the old woman again, the one from earlier. She was standing on her porch, clutching her robe with tears running down her face. She was whispering something over and over, too quiet for me to hear. It was only later that I would realize what she was saying. It chose you. Then, the front door creaked open all by itself. The air inside the house instantly dropped, becoming so cold it felt like it was burning my skin. From the darkness of the open doorway, something stepped inside. It wasn't a shadow, and it wasn't a person. It was the absence of both. It had the shape of a man, but it bent the space around it, pulling light and sound into itself. As it passed me, I understood everything. This house wasn't haunted. It was hungry. It fed on people who were alone. People no one would come looking for. People who moved in because the rent was low, and they didn't ask too many questions. The knocking wasn't a warning. It was a test to see if you were truly alone. The thing reached the bottom of the staircase. It paused, and then it turned its head toward me even though it had no face, no eyes. You answered, it said, its voice the sound of the grave. The last thing I remember is the neighbors' lights going out, one by one, until the street was dark again. The next morning, the house on Blakemore Street was quiet, for rent, cheap, and waiting for its next tenant. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to subscribe for more. Stay safe out there.